Hey, Simon, you got something going on? I got a notification. The meeting is being live streamed. So behave or not yet?
Now being live streamed.
Now being live streamed. Okay. I think we can officially start then. Yeah. As usual, sorry for the delay, guys. The tech setups sometimes take its own time. And I would like to welcome Rudrank. Renuka, would you like to do some quick introductions and introduce what's our session about?
So this is our, I think, last session on this dev camp, and here is the Rudrank who is going to cover the how to set up the CI/CD pipeline and how you can do this job very easily with the Codemagic. So over to you, Rudrank, and yeah.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Rudrank Riyam and I am the iOS Developer Relations at Codemagic. And I'm very thankful to that Renuka and Sumit invited me over, and we are going to have this wonderful session on working with CI/CD, the need for CI/CD and how you can automate your Flutter scripts and how you can do that on Codemagic very easily. So I'm just going to share my screen. So before I start, I want to give an introduction about myself so that we are familiar. I have interned at Apple before with the accessibility speech team that is responsible for the Mac OS Siri and the voice control software. I used to previously work as an iOS engineer, and I still work as a technical writer, writing for different startups across the world. And currently I work as an iOS developer relations, where I'm advocating and helping the iOS community make the most out of Codemagic. For this session, I want it to be as interactive as possible. So I would really love that you all ask me questions that I can answer. And then we have chats about, and if you have any queries or any problems, then you can just share that with me. So the session, I want to divide the session into 4 parts of half an hour each. We start with the introduction to what CI/CD is and what is the need for it. Then we go on to doing some automation on a repository that I have found that is very helpful for you all. Then I jump on to introduction to Codemagic, where I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to go through Codemagic and add our first app into our account. And then we are going to go through the workflow editor to see how we can create our first workflow and build and test the app on Codemagic. So let's get started. So when I say the word CI/CD, it means continuous integration and continuous delivery or continuous deployment. So if I have to just have it in one line, so it means that it is a development practice that helps you automate your software releases. So what I mean by that is, let's say if you're going to release your app to the App Store after this session is over, you have to manually go to Xcode, then manually archive your app, then wait for it to process. Then when it is on the developer portal, from there you submit it to App Store review. And by chance, if you made any changes or if you just made any mistakes, then you are repeating that whole process again. But as a developer, you do not want to waste your productive time doing some mundane tasks, right? You want to make sure that you automate these. So here's what we have in a continuous integration process, where you want to commit the changes and it automatically does everything for you, and it continuously deploys it as well. So if you can see is this diagram, you are working in a team or individually, you have a developer as a colleague and a manager. You commit your changes to an external source control server. Let's say you are working with GitHub. When you make that commit or a pull request, the source control server fetches that from fetches your changes, and on a continuous integration server, which can be your MacBook or something hosted on an external CI provider, for example, Codemagic in our case, where we are building and testing the app. And if, let's say, if that part fails, then it notifies you if the build succeeds or not. And if you are going to upload your app to the App Store or the Play Store, then the whole process happens automatically. And this creates an infinite a kind of a feedback loop. So if you are going to do this manually, then it may be very prone to human errors, and it's a tedious task if you are doing it daily, if you have to schedule your builds daily, if you have, like, let's say, QA testers that you want to give your app to. So what as developers want to do is to make sure that we automate the process. We have a smaller feedback loop, and this feedback, this whole process is called the CI/CD process. So as when you hear the word CI/CD, it is usually you think of it as a very advanced topic. But if you use something like Codemagic, it is very easy to get started. And in the upcoming hours, we'll see how easy it is to get working with it. And let's say you add more members in your team, and your team grows, your product grows, you add more features to your app, more screens to your apps, then your CI/CD whole process grows with you. So this is one change, because that is essential, because you do not want to do the mundane task of automating, of manually doing, manually making the changes, waiting for it to happen. And then if you made any mistake, you're doing the whole repetition again. You want to just make sure that you repeat those changes. So this speed ups your software release cycle. Let's say I'm sending an app today and I have a Black Friday sale that happened yesterday. But let's say you wanted to make sure we have a Cyber Monday coming up. So you want to make an update today itself. So you are going to commit the changes today, and your external CI provider automatically sends the builds to the App Store waiting for review. But if you have to do it manually, then it may be prone to human errors that may happen. So this helps you to quickly release your software and decrease the software release cycle, and it improves your product quality, because as I'm repeating the word again and again, the human error part is now, it doesn't happen at all. So let's break down the word CI and CD in different parts and focus on the continuous integration parts first. So continuous integration means that we are continuously integrating the changes that we made to the code base. So let's say, as I took the example of Cyber Monday again, I am developing a feature that gives a 50% discount on a particular item in our app. Now I made those change. I'm going to commit that change and develop that change on my local machine. Then I commit that change. And let's say if you're not using a CI/CD process, I made that change and my colleague says that the app is crashing on my phone. And I said, no, it is working fine on my phone. How is it crashing on yours? So in this case, what we want is to have a common environment that you set up and you can trust. For example, you have the same Xcode version, same iOS version, and you're running it on let's say, iPhone 14 Pro Max. So you set up an environment or a standard that all developers can conform to, and then you maintain that standard. And let's say my test and build passes on my external environment that I have set, then only then the changes can be further pushed into the main repository. So, and this helps you to avoid any conflicts between your teammates, and that's a very casual example, but in the long run, it helps you to maintain a standard where you are also increasing your product quality and your code base as well. And while you are doing this, it's also recommended that you make small incremental changes in your code base. So I just push a small feature, then someone reviews that, and then I push, when that passes, so I push another feature, and it's a small feedback loop. So because otherwise, let's say I'm a person who writes an 1,000-line file, and then I send it for review, then my senior won't be happy with that, versus sending a 100-line change. So this is what continuous integration is about. And when we talk about continuous deployment, it means that we are continuously deployment to the QA team or to our other team members or external users. So when I have committed this change for the Cyber Monday example that I gave earlier, now I want to make sure that all the products have those discounts, and the QA team gave me a feedback that something is missing or something is wrong, then I can quickly iterate and using a continuous deployment process, automatically deploy my app again on test flight or to the Play Store. Then they can see the changes again. And if they pass that change, we can send it to external developers for more beta testing and then finally make it public. So we have this very nice pipeline that we have created, going from committing changes to building on an external server. And if there's any success or failure, then we can just iterate on that. To give you an example, on the left, we can just say that if a feature is ready for production, then we see if the CI passed or not. And if they did not, then we go and fix our CI and the code that we wrote. And if it did, we send it for QA review. And if it does not pass, we share the problem that we had with the QA team so that we can iterate on that. And when the QA has passed that, we can add that feature to production. And it same goes for releasing a new version. Like, let's say we are going to release a new version for the Cyber Monday sale. We have another step that did we do beta testing or not? And if after doing the beta testing, we get some more feedback, we can work on those feedback, then do the whole loop again. But this time we have a quicker flow because we are automating the whole process in a way that we don't have to manually deploy the app, or just whenever do I committing the change, it automatically starts a workflow to deploy the app back to the beta testers. So at this point, do you have any questions that you want me to answer, or any queries? I think I was talking too fast, and I hope everything was clear.
I think, yeah, there's not many questions. It's kind of clear. When you say beta testing, do you select those testers in the process? Because it's an app, yeah. So selectively select people who would be beta testing?
So yes, it depends on your requirements. So on test flight, you can create beta groups. Like one group can be your internal team members, like which is outside of your tech team. Let's say the marketing team or the sales team who wants to test your app. And another beta group can be someone who is close to your team and they use your product regularly, or what you can call them as power users who want to test your app. And that's how you can create your beta groups.
And you don't have to publish the app to the App Store.
Yes, yes, at this point. So just to give the audience an idea about the app store process, we have test flight, which is kind of an place where you test your app, and it is different from the App Store. Like, I can deploy my app to the test flight, which has many beta groups. They give me feedback, anything about the app. It doesn't matter if it crashed or not, because this is just enclosed for those people only, those who have the link or those who were invited to test the app. And when we are sure that the apps works and everything is okay, then we can deploy the app we can deploy the same version of the app to the App Store, or we can make changes and deploy another version. So these are two different things. And so when I talk about CI/CD and external server, so these external server can be, let's say I have a MacBook at home, which I'm not using as much. I can use that as a machine to do this CI/CD process, where I'm using it as a machine to deploy my app or integrate my changes on that. But the problem with, and many teams do that, but the thing is that you are going to manage and maintain those machines, and you are investing your time, or as the team grows, you may have a dedicated team that is handling that. So this is more of an on-premise CI/CD. And then we have the cloud premise CI/CD, which is the best example that I can give is of Codemagic, where we handle the stress of managing and maintaining the machines. All you have to do is make the changes, and then we just run the workflow, and then we handle the rest for you. So these are the two types of CI/CD process that we have. And the thing is that when you're working with the cloud-based CI/CD, it is a little less flexible because you don't have all the controls from that. And there are, for very huge teams, there are security issues. But for developers like you and me who are working on their apps and just want to have our app on the App Store as fast as we can, then working with Codemagic or any other CI provider is the best thing to go to if you want to automate the whole process. Because what I have learned, like I wrote an article on misery of automating bills, misery of manually sending bills. Like when I started out 2 or 3 years back, I did not know much about CI/CD process, and I was working for I was working as an intern, and I was working on a new WatchOS app, and the founder wanted some changes. So when he asked me for the changes, I used to go to Xcode, then try and manually archive it, then wait for it to archive, then send it to App Store, then wait for it to process, then go to developer.apple.com portal, then submit it for review on test flight. Then he said, okay, there's another change that I want. Then I repeated the whole process again, and that took me like 15 minutes per change. And after that, I realized, okay, I have wasted a lot of time on this process. There must be something better. That's how I got to know about Fastlane, which is, I think some of you may know about. Fastlane is an automation tool that you can directly use on your local machine. And you can even use the Fastlane automation commands on a cloud provider. So the difference between the two is that on an automation tool, it is running on your local machine. As you can, you have to wait for the changes to make that are happening or sending on your own machine. But on a cloud provider, everything is happening on another virtual machine. So let's say I have committed the code and I want to deploy an app on the test flight. Then after deployment, I can just continue working on my own stuff on Xcode or Android Studio without waiting for it to happen, because it is already happening in the cloud. And if that workflow builds or succeeds or fails, then I just get a notification about it. So with that, I think I have completed the first part where I talk about introduction to CI/CD. And as you understand, the need for CI/CD is that you understand the time is crucial, and you want to save your productive time and don't want to spend time on mundane tasks that you may have to do as a software developer again and again. The time that you are investing in that can be more better utilized to work on a new feature for your users, or do some bug fixing, than just manually archiving the app again and again. And it just makes it a lot better to work in this agile environment. And then you're working at the feedback loop, and you're just feedback loop is much quicker when you're working in a team. And as your team grows, you see that the need for a streamlined process gets better, much more needed. So I wish to have some questions or queries or anything that you want to share about the word CI/CD that you learned or had in your mind.
Guys, ask some question. If you have any question related to the CI/CD, it's the time you can ask the question. Rudrank is here to answer you.
I have not exactly a question. Maybe you will cover it later, Rudrank.
Mhm.
So CI and CD is continuous delivery, and you mentioned feature. Now, a lot of people also use feature flagging.
Mhm.
So you're saying that, okay, I'm ready. I would like to do continuous delivery, but the feature should not be visible. Does Codemagic support that? Or as I said, it could be a question that is that could be answered in upcoming slides, but I'm just maybe asking.
So when you say feature flagging, it is just in the end a flag that is a Boolean value or a true or false that you can set. So when you want to deploy your app, you can uh, add those configurations and let's say Xcode that in for this particular build, I don't want to have this particular feature enabled. And you can make sure to make that this configuration is added automatically for this particular workflow. So you can use Codemagic for this as well. But then
Okay,
you will
yeah.
have to write the code for it to make sure that it is enabled or not.
Mhm.
So I think if I guess I will have more question after I see a practical example. I think uh, that's a good thing. So let me just go. And Damien said that Fastlane for Android, Codemagic for iOS, plus you save build times. So definitely, when you are using an M1 Mac Mini, the time that you get is just half of the previous Intel models that they were present before. So I found this repository called as Flutter Examples by Nishant, which has simple, basic, isolated apps for budding Flutter devs, and I think it's a very good repository to share with you all because it gives examples of very common states that you may use in your Flutter journey. So I will just share this link in the chat. So the next step is that we are going to try and work with this repository. And there's this one particular folder called as unit testing that we can use so that we can find, I can show you examples of how you can test as well. So now I'm going to open this folder in VS Code to give you a demonstration of what this app is all about. So in a normal Flutter project, you have the Android folder, the iOS folder, the library folder that contains the code, and the test folder. So in the library folder, we have an API. It's a very small API that gets a few places, a model and a screen. The main thing I want to show, so before I get started showing the code, it is better to just run the app so you can see it visually. So I'm going to open a simulator. So it's a nice iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now I'm going to write the command flutter run so that it runs on the simulator. I think my iPhone is connected. My iPad is connected, so I'm going to run it on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So my main idea with this project is that it is a very simple basic app with two screens, and it has a few tests that validates a login screen that we can write here. So this login screen is not connected to any Firebase or any service. It's just a screen to demonstrate a login screen. If I write a password like 1234 and try to sign in, it will say that the minimum length must be 8 characters. And this is helpful because after we are going to write a unit test for that to make sure that the password is always more than 8 characters. And when I sign in, it uses an API to fetch some data. We have the concurrent backwaters. These are some places with images. I think there should be images as well, but I don't see it right now. But as you can see, the idea is that it is a 2-screen app, and we have some tests for it. The first test is that we fetch the places, and it's an async function. We wait to get data, and when we get the data, we make sure that the array of places that we get is more than 0. That means we are getting some data. And if the location has a value, it has an ID, we expect that it is not null. And when after this for loop completes and we make sure that the data does not have any ID as null, then we pass this particular unit test. And same goes for the form validator. As I mentioned above, we make sure that we make sure that the minimum length of the password must be 8 characters. So we just write hello, and which is for 5 characters, and we expect that the form validator make sure that the password must be of 8 characters. Then there's another to make sure that it is not null, and this is a valid password test. And if it is an empty string, we give the output as please enter your password and please enter your mail. So these are some common basic example tests that I just wanted to give as an example. So if I run Flutter test, which is a command for running all the tests that we have, you see that the test is running, and we have 7 tests, and all the tests have passed successfully. So from this project, what I wanted to give you an example is if there's another command to analyze if there are any mistakes in our app or not, or if there are any there are any issues that there are not. So we use the Flutter analyze command, and after analyzing our project, we see that no issues were found. So the idea I want to give you for this is that when you are making a small change or a small feature that you're working on, then you are running these commands, Flutter analyze, run, and test again and again. So what if we have just a script or a command where we can just make sure that we just run it once, and all of these 3 happens in just one line of a command. So the hacky way is to just write Flutter analyze and operator, Flutter test, and Flutter run. But then it's more of a hacky way, and as you write more bigger scripts, then this won't work well. So what I want you all to do is that if you're following along in this project, is to go to the Flutter examples repository, and you will find examples of scripts that ends with the sh format. So I will just make sure that the font is much bigger. So you see at the top, we have defined the environment that we are using. And these are some complex scripts that gives you an idea about it. So what we want to do is start more simple and copy this, go to our unit testing folder, and just name it as action. Okay, I already have this one. So we just name it as action. And in this, we are just going to write 3 commands that we have already discussed before, which is Flutter analyze, Flutter test, and Flutter run. The importance of these 3 commands is these 3 commands are important when we go to the introduction of Codemagic and how we can run, analyze, test, and run our app on Codemagic. So now we save this file and we go back to our terminal. I'm just going to reset it. I'm just going to reset it for now. Now I will just run this script that we wrote. Now you can see that it is analyzing the folder, no issues were found, and then it automatically runs the next command, which is Flutter test. and all the tests have passed, and it is automatically running the next command, which is flutter build. And it is now, after running the project, it automatically runs it on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So with a single script, a very simple script, we were able to just use these 3 commands in one file. So this is a very basic example of giving an introduction about scripting, and an introduction to automation and scripting. So at this point, do you have any questions that you want to ask me? Or I would want to ask you that if you have used any script before and want to share about your experience with that. I think I will move forward. And so now the main part of this session is introduction to Codemagic. So what I want you all to do is go to codemagic.io. I will just share the link in the chat as well. So as the name suggests, that Codemagic is a CI/CD for mobile that matches your needs. And we want to select the type of projects as Flutter because we are working with it and want to get started with it. Oh, my Mac is beach balling right now. So as mentioned, Flutter is one of the most popular. Codemagic is the most popular CI/CD for Flutter developers. It is available for all platforms. It has great documentation. And when we want to start building your project on Codemagic, you get 500 builds minutes free every month. And this build minutes are on the Apple M1 Mac Mini. So you get the fastest speed that Codemagic has to offer with 500 builds minutes free. So after I am done talking about Codemagic in a while, then we are all going to create an account if you have not done so already. And I will also create a new account for myself so that it is more approachable. So as I talked earlier about continuous integration, when I commit my code changes, it automatically triggers a workflow. It automatically build triggers, and we can do some testing and code analysis on Codemagic. It is building for all platforms. As you know, Flutter is known for building for almost all the platforms out there, whether it is iOS, Android, macOS, Linux, Windows, the name goes on. And as a developer, you know about this process called as code signing, so which is notoriously annoying process. This process is for the Apple platforms. When you are going to publish your app to the App Store, Apple wants to make sure that the app is your app and is signed by and it is specific to your account. So Apple signs the app for you, and this whole process of signing is called as code signing. And it is a very annoying process and difficult one, but because let's say if I'm working on my code signing process and I have my own build certificates, and my colleague also has the certificates, and for one of them the certificate expire or something goes wrong, then it just creates a havoc, especially if there's some release that you want to do, and you get the point of the pain that you may have to endure because of this code signing. So in this case, you have this external machine that does the code signing for you and takes the pain from you. And the last thing is that you use continuous delivery to publish your app on the App Store or the Play Store, and you can get notification in terms of email or Slacks and many other notification platforms that Codemagic supports. As someone who is more used to visual editor, Codemagic offers two ways of working with creating a workflow. One is the workflow editor, which is more of an intuitive UI, versus a Codemagic YAML file, which is a workflow configuration where you write your configuration. Let's say you want to have the build machine as a Mac Mini, and then you write the scripts there. And on workflow editor, you can just check mark the things that you want. And as a person who is more visual, we are going to talk about the workflow editor in the upcoming session. So just to give an overview of how Codemagic works before we dive into creating our own account, you add your app wherever it's hosted. Codemagic integrates with GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and it can be your own self-hosted Git repository. After you are done adding your app, then you start the build. The build can be on a premium instance like the Apple M1 Mac Mini, or a Mac Pro on a Linux machine, or a Windows build machine. Then you can trigger the test automatically to make sure that the test that you run, the unit test or the integration test that you run, these work well on the simulator for iOS or emulators for Android. And you can get notification and feedback. You can get the APK file in your Slack as well after the workflow finishes, or you can just automatically deploy the app on App Store or the Play Store. And we love the community. So if you are someone as a community, if you are someone who wants to write about CI/CD or Flutter, anything that is something that is useful in Flutter, then you can also contact us on that. So jumping to the main part of creating an account, Mukibi said that if you created your GitHub account with your Gmail account, it is still connected. I think while I was practicing for this workshop, I realized that. So I'm actually going to use a email address for this purpose. And I hope that everything goes well in this case. So let's go to Codemagic. Flutter. So you click on the Start Building Now button that goes to the sign up page. Now you can create an account, and there are many sites which may require your credit card, but Codemagic is unlike them. So no credit card is required. You can sign up with your GitHub, Bitbucket or GitLab account. So if I try to sign up with my GitHub account, I already have an account. So I want to make sure that I sign up with an Gmail account or a different account. So I'm going to use my personal email account. And try to create an account. Oops, I think I messed up. The first field is for your name and the second is for your email address. So it has sent me an authentication code that I will just quickly copy. So now if you have signed up using your email address, you will go to the onboarding page, which says that welcome aboard Rudrank. Getting started with Codemagic is easy. You add your application and you will be up and running within just a few clicks. And it is actually true, as you see. So you click on the Get Started button. I want to connect my repository using GitHub. And I want to authorize using my GitHub account. It will then again send me another authentication code. So I will go back and use the authentication code. So now I have successfully authenticated my GitHub account, and it asked me to set up an application. it says that you should select your repository, and I'm going to use the same repository I discussed before, which is the Flutter examples one. And the project type is a Flutter app, and we are going to do it via the workflow editor. And we finish adding the application, and that's it. We have set up our application on Codemagic successfully. So before I go and start the first build, let's jump into the workflow editor. So the workflow, to give a brief overview what this workflow editor is, it to run an workflow, a pipeline for CI/CD process. You have some options, like let's say the build, which platform that you want to build, or on which machine that you want to build, if you want to run some tests or not, or if you want to build your app and then publish it on the App Store or the Play Store, and where you want to be notified all about. So it has automatically created a default workflow for me, and the build platforms is an Android and iOS. You can also choose macOS, Linux, or Windows. It runs on the macOS M1 machines, which is a standard one on Codemagic now. It is the fastest one that we have. Then we have the build triggers. The idea of build triggers is that, let's say I commit a code on my GitHub account, it should trigger on push. Means that it will automatically start this workflow when I push any small changes in my app. And if you're creating another workflow, you are working on another feature on a different branch, you can add the branch patterns that you want to watch where you are making the change. Or let's say you have done a new release and have added a new tag to it, let's say 2.1.1, then you can also add the tag pattern for it. And then automatically you can trigger on pull request update, trigger on tag creation. But for this session, we are just going to trigger on push. Then we have the environment variables. So let's say you are working with some confidential API keys that are in your projects, and you don't want to commit those on your GitHub repository, especially if it is a public repository, because there are people who may misuse those API keys. So you can encode, base64 encode these files, these keys on Codemagic, or even files like the firebase info.plist file, and save it on Codemagic's environment variables. These files then can be used in your code using the dollar symbol. And then these variables are decoded on the virtual machine and then deleted afterwards. So it is, and you can also take secure if you have any key like that, which you want to make sure that is secure. Then dependency catching is a more of an advanced topic, but to give an overview, it allows you to speed up your builds by storing the dependencies on Codemagic. Let's say you have a pod file, you're using Coca pods for your Flutter application, and the Firebase is a huge dependency, and you don't make changes in those dependency every time you are building your app, right? But then the Firebase dependencies build every time you are building your app as well. So you want to make sure that you are caching the Firebase dependency in this case, because that helps you to speed up the build, because it is not going to build up again and again for each build that you send. So this gives a very simple overview of working with, give you an introduction about the workflow editor on Codemagic. So at this point, I want to stop and take a break, because I've been talking for a long time. So if you have any questions, just let me know. If you have any queries, or if you have been struggling trying to set up Codemagic on your machine or not.
A quick one. So this is all free till now. So I'm kind of running my own build on an M1 Mac Mini for the last minute, and all of that was free. No credit card needed.
Yes, I think this is the biggest advantage. If I have to be really honest, like for the past 1 year that I've been working at Codemagic, I've been testing a lot and dog fooding the new features that come along. Even then, I have not been able to hit that 500 minutes mark every month. Like the maximum I have done is like 450 minutes, and I've been using it for my personal apps as well. Even then, I'm hitting like 250, 300 minutes. because the major change is the M1 Mac Mini on Codemagic is very fast. So my build that used to take like 10 minutes on Intel Mac Mini now takes around 3 minutes. So I'm consuming a lot less minutes now.
Okay, we can take like a few minutes break. When you come back, I just have one question. This is for app building, not for web, yeah?
So you can also deploy your app on the web. As you can see on the screen, under the build platforms, you can select Android, iOS, web, macOS, Linux, Windows.
Okay, yeah.
That's why Codemagic is known very much into the Flutter community.
Okay, let's just take a few minutes break.
So just to answer one last question by Mkibi, that once you cross 500 minutes, then you get charged. That's very fair. I think, yes, that's very fair. But the thing is with Codemagic is that if I go to the pricing page, it says that you pay as you grow, and a macOS standard M1 standard premium is like $0.095 per minute. So let's see, if you're consuming 100 minutes, it's just $9.5, which I think is very cheap and affordable when it comes to and CI/CD experience, because 100 minutes is a lot. Let's say if your project is big and it takes around 10 minutes, then you get 10 builds for just $9.5. And one unique feature about Codemagic is that we have a month cap. So let's say you are a very big team and your builds are huge, that takes like an hour to build, then you may quickly hit this limit of more minutes. But then as soon as your pay as you go minutes hit $299, we won't charge you after that, even if you are using double the or triple the amount of your minutes. So I think it's really good pricing in terms of how a big project can use Codemagic as a CI/CD provider. A minute break before we go on to the part where we are jumping into building and testing the app. So I saw Damien's question and I want to answer it before I go and take the break. So Damien says that, is it possible to configure two workflows for two branches, for example? Absolutely, you can do that, a master and a develop branch. So this is a very common practice in bigger teams, like where you have the develop branch for your development, and when you are sure that the changes are working correctly, then from the develop branch you commit to the master branch to make sure the app goes from the master branch, because that's your single source of truth. So this process is usually followed in many big companies. And for this, you can configure two workflows. I will come in the next section. I will talk about this when we are on the building part. Yes, you can use develop for test flight master to build master flavors. I'm so excited to dive into this and show you right now, but I think I will go and take a break first.
Yeah, Rudrank, we can have like a 5 minutes break and we will come back again and then we can go more deep into this. Yes.
So I am back after a break, and I'll try to speak more slowly because I feel I have been talking a little much faster.
No, it's fine, Rudrank. That's okay. We will just wait for 2-3 minutes more.
Mhm.
People will come back. If people already back here, if you have any question for Rudrank, and you can ask.
And one small request is that if you are enjoying this session and you learn something new here, I would request you that if you're on Twitter or LinkedIn, just post about it that you're enjoying this session. It gives me motivation to help more students.
Yeah, definitely. So Rudrank, if someone is a beginner and
Mhm.
who wants to have to set up the CI/CD pipeline for their project,
Mhm.
so what do you give suggestion to them? Basically, they should use start with the Codemagic, or they should have some previous experience for to do that kind of thing. For
I
any
think
beginners, beginners never go into this section when they started learning Flutter, right? So what you can tell them basically how they can start with this?
so. As I will show in the next half an hour,
Yeah.
how easy it is to set up your CI/CD pipeline using Flutter and the Codemagic's workflow editor. Like we just have 2 more steps before I start building my first workflow, and I hope that it will succeed and it will be a successful build. And it is, this project actually has some tests as well, so you can see that if you are using your own app as a beginner which has, let's say, a few screens, and you have written some unit test, integration test, widget test for it, you can easily create your CI/CD pipeline within, let's say, 10 minutes or a maximum of 30 minutes.
Okay.
And what I would recommend you to do is to try and run these tests on your a local machine first, so that you are sure that it will work on CI/CD server on Codemagic. And one thing, if time permits, what I want to cover is that Codemagic also has an open source CLI tool that we use for Codemagic. So if you just run those commands on your local machine, then those commands are the same one that we use for on Codemagic. So if these are working very well on your local machine, and if you do not want to, like, you're still deciding if you want to use Codemagic or not, or if you want to go to another CI/CD, which I hope that you don't want to do that, then you can still use the Codemagic CLI because it is open source and it is not gated to a particular CI provider.
Okay.
So Edward has a question that CI/CD pipeline, the YAML file, right? The one that runs command in succession, that's the pipeline, the running of consecutive commands. Yes, the YAML file is something, if I just go on the screen and click on switch to YAML configuration, it will say that select whether to use the Flutter workflow editor or the Codemagic YAML file to configure the builds. I want to export the current changes and save the changes. So now you will see we will have our Codemagic YAML file. And if I just try and save this file and open it for you, so this YAML file, as the name suggests, is the default workflow that Codemagic created for us. The max duration for is 60 minutes. Like after 60 minutes, it will time out. The environment is that we are using the default Flutter version, the latest Xcode version, which is Xcode 14.1. And then there are scripts that run one by one in successive commands. And right now I have not set up the testing and building part, so the scripts are not showing, but then in the end, I will try and show that as well. Like you can see the commands right here. It says Flutter package pubget for analyzing Flutter build, app bundle, Flutter build iOS, debug, no code sign. These are the scripts that are working in succession. So if I just commit a change in my GitHub repository, all the command, the scripts will automatically run in a succession, one after another, and I don't have to manually intervene and do any changes. So that eradicates the need for any human error that may occur or any human intervention in this. I can go and have a coffee while the build is running. I hope that answers your question. So I will switch back to the workflow editor. So do you think, Renuka, we can start testing and building?
Yeah. We can start now.
When what I'm asking Rudrank, the configuration in the YAML, that is what we're actually considering as the pipeline. When somebody says the pipeline, the YAML file is that what they're referring to. Yes, the YAML considers all the workflow configuration, which is a workflow or a pipeline that you can call. A pipeline is nothing but commands that we are running in a pipeline. Like the first command is to analyze our code. The second command in the pipeline is to test the code. The third one is to build the app. And when the app successfully builds, publish the app on the App Store or the Play Store. And the last command is to send a notification if this whole pipeline was a success or a failure. So when someone says that this is the YAML file, then yes, it is the file. But in our case, in the workflow editor, it's more of a visual pipeline. And for someone who is more of a visual, who learns visually, I love the visual editor because you can consider this as a pipeline as well. So
Yeah, Rudran, we can start now.
yes.
So that, yeah.
So the workflow is your pipeline, your mobile CI/CD, DevOps pipeline. These are very synonymous words that people use. So going further, we have tests. You assure the quality of your code by running the test and static code analysis. So static code analysis, as it mentions, it helps to find, it is, you test your code using the Flutter analyze command to find possible mistakes. And it makes sure, and so we want to enable the Flutter analyzer, and then we can use the Flutter Dart code metrics to make sure that our code does not have any NT patterns. For example, very long method names or very long parameter lists. So using this Dart code metrics, we can get metrics about the number of methods that we have in our code, or the number of parameters in the method, or the number of lines in our code. So we are going to make sure that we have this first. We want to analyze our code first before jumping into the test, because let's say that there are some problems in our app that the Flutter analyzer found, then we can stop the build there itself. It does not continue doing the test and the build. Then down at that point itself, then we can go and fix it, and then commit again, and then run the Flutter analyzer again. The second part is the integration and unit test. We want to enable the Flutter test because, as mentioned in the project that I shown, we have some unit tests that we want to run. And then you have the Flutter driver test where you want to run your integration test. In that project, we don't have any integration tests, but if you write integration tests in your app, then you have to make sure that we enable Flutter drive test as well and run those tests on an iOS simulator. And if you are running it on, if you have a web app, then you make sure that you run the Flutter driver test on Chrome. So now we are going to save changes. So now we have made sure that we first analyze our code, we have enabled it, and we have made sure that we're going to run tests for our app and have enabled it. The next part is on building our app, which is the main part of a CI/CD workflow or a pipeline. So we choose the default Flutter version. There are many Flutter versions that you may want to use, all dating back to 1.1.1 to the latest one. I'm just going to choose default for now. You can also have your Xcode version. Let's say your app is not compatible with the latest 14.1, then you can use 13.4 as well, but it is usually advised to use the latest one. Then you can use the CocoaPods version as well. We are going to just leave it as default. The next thing is that Codemagic can automatically detect the project path from your source code. So let's say that this project, as you have seen, if I just go back to this project, which is Flutter examples, it has the root of this repository does not have any Flutter code. There are many projects in this repository, and each of them has an individual Flutter project in itself. So what we want on Codemagic is that we are going to rescan the project path on the develop branch. We are going to rescan it. And Codemagic gives me all the Flutter projects that it found in the repository, which is kind of very cool. So now we are going to go to the unit testing one, a project, and we are going to build. And then the next option is to select the Android build format. It can be an Android app bundle, an Android app package. We are just going to leave it at Android app bundle. The next part of building is that there are three modes when it comes to building the app. The first one is debug, where you are using it for debug purposes. In this part, you do not have to code sign your app. You can just use it on the iOS simulator as well. So this is the easiest way to run your first workflow and make sure that everything is working all right. Then the second one is release, where you are making your app available for release, as the name suggests, on test flight or app store or the Play Store. And the third mode is profile, where you are trying to see the performance of your app and analyze the performance of your app. And then we have the build arguments. If you have any other build additional arguments that you want to provide the flavors for this particular iOS app, then you can do that as well. For the mode, we are just going to select add debug and save changes. Now we have the distribution part, where you can distribute your Android and iOS artifacts for beta testing or publishing. As I mentioned in the beginning, on the continuous deployment part, where you can update you can send your app to your QA testers or your external users. You can automatically do this using Codemagic. So you have your Android. So before sending it to external developers, you have to make sure that you do the Android code signing and iOS code signing. These are a little advanced topic, and I won't be able to cover them in this session, but it is something that I will give you as an assignment to do on your own using the Codemagic documentation. When you are releasing your own app, and do tag me on Twitter when you are successfully using Codemagic to send your app to the App Store. And the last part is notifications. You can set up notifications for receiving build updates on artifacts. As you can see, it has already enabled used email publishing and has added my email address. I can also add it to my work address, so it sends to that as well. And I save the changes. You can also send connect your workspace, your Slack workspace, to enable Slack messages. But for now, we are just going to set up email notifications. So now that we have a whole workflow ready for us to just go and start building. Before that, I will take a question from the Damon, like, any idea why is my build section disabled for me? So I just want to make sure that have you chosen the build platform Android and iOS correctly or not. Like you should at least choose one of them.
I have to select the both.
So you can
Or
select any one of them as per your requirements.
yeah, I think I need to select both because now it's enabled.
Yes.
Okay.
So now that we have so for now I'm going to test it on iOS because I'm more inclined towards iOS platform. No mobile platform wars here, but it is just my personal bias. Now I'm going to save the changes, and finally we are going to start our first build and see how it pans out. So answering the Damien's question again, at this point, you can select your branch that you want to use. And for this project, we only have one branch, but you may have many branches in your app. It may be the master branch or the develop branch or the testing branch or any particular feature branch that you're using or a QA branch. There can be many branches. And it says that we are using the default workflow. You can also duplicate and create another workflow for, let's say, your master branch or your particular branch that you want to do. This way, you have many other options. Let's say one workflow is specifically for sending your app to the test flight, and one workflow is specifically just for building and testing the app on every pull request. So for every requirement that you have, you can create different workflows. So now I'm going to start a new build. So it starts with publishing the build machine. It starts with preparing the build machine, which is an external server that Codemagic has. And on the left, you can see the build overview. It says that we are using the workflow as the default workflow. The status is preparing. It started again. The machine that we're using is the M1 Mac Mini. It is running on the branch develop. Now, if you on the right, we can see that we are fetching app resources. And now when it says that we are fetching app resources, it's getting your project from the GitHub repository. And now we are going to install the dependencies. And now it is on the testing part. If I just click on this testing part and see the logs, we can actually see that it ran the Flutter analyze command, and it analyzed the unit testing project and no issues were found. Now it is using the Flutter test command, and you can see all the tests running in real time. So when these, so usually, so if I just go back and see the results, so for the Flutter analyze, no issues were found in our app. And as you can see, the Flutter form validator had 6 tests and all the tests have passed successfully. The Flutter test valid pass test, etc. And same for the places test that we had. And for building the iOS app, it runs the Flutter build iOS for debug mode with no code signing. And it took just 15 seconds to build this app. And in just, I think, let's say how many minutes it took. It took around 1 minute 30 seconds to do our first workflow, for first official CI/CD workflow. So we should just clap for everyone who is present and saw that how easy it is to set up your first CI/CD workflow on Codemagic.
Great. So fast.
Yes, so that's the power of the Apple's M1 machine. And we should thank Apple for creating the
1
silicon
minute.
chips.
1 minute. I mean, super fast.
So now that we have seen a very simple example of creating a workflow editor, you can iterate on this and update the same for publishing your app on, let's say, on TestFlight, on App Store, or your Google Play Store. And then if I go back, So on the right, if I just try to zoom in, there's a duplicate workflow option. So if I click on this, it has created a copy of it. Now, as Damien mentioned, I'm going to call it the develop workflow. So this is for develop that I'm going to use for, I'm going to use this workflow for develop, and then it can be for Android, and for test, I can just not do a static analysis on this or anything. So my idea is the idea of this is that you can create different workflows for your different needs. And you can make sure that this one is on release or anything like that. So I got a question that, can you set triggers for the workflow? So if I go back to this section on build triggers, you can select which branches to track and when to trigger builds. Like if I have to give you a very simple example, I go back to the repository and I just go to the README file and I just try to edit it and featured in all these repositories, and I go and commit the changes, and we go back to Codemagic. So it looks like nothing has happened yet. I think if I go back and make changes in the app itself, so let's say if I go to the unit testing folder and I update the README here itself, and if I try to refresh this, so we see nothing has happened. So this is a very classic case to see how your CI/CD pipeline may have some problems. And now we are going to together try to debug this. So if I go to my default workflow, I see I have set it as iOS, and on the build triggers, okay, can you see what did I miss here? On the automatic build triggering, I forgot to make sure that trigger on push is selected. That's why the build wasn't automatically triggering. So now we are going to save the changes. And we are not going to do anything on Codemagic. We are just going to go back to the build page. I will go back to the README file. I will just change something here. I made a mistake. Haha. And I'm going to commit this. And if I go back to Codemagic, on the bottom left, you see that build for Flutter examples has already started. And if I click on view build, you see that it was started by a GitHub webhook. Webhook is nothing but that it is sending the data, a post request that, okay, Rudrank has made changes in his repository. Now start a build on this Flutter example repository. And now we have our whole deployment process running, because I did not manually do this process and it was an automatic process. And now it will automatically build the app. And if you are, let's say you had also published, you also had Codemagic enabled for sending your app on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, then with just one commit into my project, then it would have deployed the app to the App Store as well. And just no manual human intervention at all. And I find this whole idea of CI/CD very cool, and Codemagic has made it a lot easier for someone who is just new to CI/CD and want to get started with it. So the learning curve when it comes to CI/CD has been very lowered because of Codemagic. And I think that, as Damien mentioned, that his project took 2 minutes 50 seconds, and the project has Firebase. And if you know, Firebase is a huge dependency and it takes so much time. And with all his packages and Firebase, it only took him 2 minutes and 50 seconds, which is really fast. So Damien, do you want to say something about it?
No, I'm just impressed because previously to M1 the build takes like I remember 10 minutes or 50 minutes or something like that. But now it's extremely fast. So yeah, I like it.
And on the notification parts, if I see my mail, I have got 2 mails from Codemagic that my build has succeeded already. And this was the one that was done automatically on when I made the changes in the README file. So this, you can see a very practical example of a practical example of a CI/CD pipeline where I'm committing the code to Git repository, and it automatically starts a build where we are analyzing the code, testing the code, building the code, and you can also publish your app directly, or you can just make sure that the changes that you made, all the builds and the tests are passing successfully. A classic example I can give you is that you're working in a team and you made some feature, you created a pull request, and before the reviewer starts the review for that pull request, they want to see that there are checks on the GitHub repository for that pull request or not. Because if all the tests are not passing, they may want to ask you to make sure that the tests are passing or why they are failing. So the feedback loop is very much reduced using these practices of CI/CD, because it helps reduce the time it helps reduce the time it takes to automate the software release cycle. So I can give you a very small example of my own project that I have been working on. So as you can see, I have a pull request here, and I'm working on this Musadora kit. It is for integrating Apple Music in your app. So you can see I created this Musadora 2.0 pull request. So every time I make a new change, you can see that if when on the rewrite everything related to ratings, there was some fails. Like I made some very drastic changes and the tests were failing. So I went back and then I fixed those tests, and then I added more tests for rating. And then I updated the documentation for it, and then I merged the main branch into this, and then all the checks, all the tests and the build is now passing. So it is a classic example how now I can go and review my own code. But when you are working in a bigger team, it will be someone else who is reviewing your code. So at this point, do you have any other questions that you want to ask? Feel free to ask me. And if you want to write it in the Slack, in the meeting chat, then you can also do that. And if you're a little shy, you can just directly message me privately in the meeting chat.
Anyone have any questions? It's very easy. Like I have just seen the whole demo, Rudrank, and it's feel very easy. I think we should promote this for the any beginners who wants to do deep dive into the CI/CD should try the Codemagic thing. Definitely.
I think using the workflow editor, it is much easier compared to writing the YAML file or the scripts in that.
Yeah.
Because it's all visual, and all you have to do is just do some check marks everywhere. And if I have to give a very simple conclusion, then Codemagic is very beginner friendly. It's like your if I have to talk about the line, like friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, it's your friendly neighborhood CI/CD.
That's great.
So before I wrap up this session, what I want you all to do is I want to give you an assignment that I have prepared. So before talking about the assignment, I have seen a question by I see a question, how is it different from GitHub Actions? So GitHub Actions is also a CI provider, and you can also use Fastlane or scripts on that. The main difference with GitHub Actions versus Codemagic is that if I have to talk about the build machines, we have the M1 machines, which is like way faster compared to the Intel machines that are available on GitHub Actions. On GitHub Actions, you, I think, get unlimited minutes if you are an open source project. But if it's a private repository, they have very weird credit system that you have. And the main, they don't have a visual editor like we have on Codemagic, and you have to write your own scripts there. So these are the main differences that I can think about. And Mukibi write that I'm now even more enthusiastic about working on projects and being able to build and deploy them. I can very much relate to that, because when I was working last year as a freelancer and I had to work with clients, and for me, the worst part of the whole app development cycle was deploying, because going to Xcode, manually archiving your app, and then after like 15 minutes, it says that you have a problem in your app, and then you're repeating the whole cycle again. It was just frustrating and the worst part of the development life cycle. But after I started using Codemagic, then it is the most simplest part of working with deploying my app to my friends or the external beta testers. So that's a very much change that Codemagic has brought into my hobby of working on iOS apps. So talking about the assignment, so if you Google Codemagic API, so Codemagic has its own set of REST APIs that enables you to programmatically access Codemagic service. And I went through the curriculum of the Flutter Dev Camp, and I see in the beginning months that you worked on API integration. And I thought that this will be a very cool project that you can take up. So what I want you to do is try to use the API, the REST API, and create your own cool project where you're handling all the build overviews. You can create a UI for it and have all the build. You can just click on start build from your mobile phone app on the Flutter app, and then it automatically starts a build on Codemagic. For this, I will give you an overview that you can use the authentication API, that and you can get the API token from user settings, and you can get it from your user settings, and there are two more APIs. The second one is retrieving all the applications. For this project, we only have one app, then I can retrieve this app, and then it's a very normal get apps query parameter, path parameter, sorry. And then for the builds, you can start a build using a post request. So if you want to play around with the get request and post request, I think this is a very good project that you want to just play around with, experiment with. You can get a list of builds and get the build status as well that you can show in your app. And you can also cancel the build from using the post as well. So I hope you try and this Codemagic API and have fun with it. So that brings me to the end of the session. And I hope you all enjoyed learning about CI/CD, the need for it, how Codemagic works, a subtle introduction to Codemagic, and how easy it was to create your first workflow within minutes and start a new successful build.
One question, is there a way to using this API or maybe in Codemagic, like receive a notification when a build finish besides email and Slack?
So
like a push notification or something.
So if I go to
I mean
YAML,
for this for this assignment you talk, because I'm thinking in an application just see the builds. When I push, I don't know, I have to go to the street, to the stores to do something, and I push and I want to see if the application is actually building in my phone, so it will be
Yes.
interesting in like receiving a push notification or something like that.
So I think what you want in this case is that one thing is that you can use the webhooks to make sure that you're getting the data from that. Another thing is that you
Yeah.
can use the build status API using the ID to return the information of an already running build. The status will be like it is building, it is cancelled, or if it has finished, or if it is still fetching the data, or if it is still publishing, it is queued, etc., etc.
All right.
I think
Thank
what you
you.
mean in this case is that you want to get a push notification in your app as soon as a build is like, let's say, finished, right?
Yeah, like the build is started, the build started, and the build finish, something like that.
Yes, I think you can use the webhooks. I will get back to you on this, but for now you can use the get build status to get the build, and let's say if the status is equal to finish, then you can create a post notification for it. And for the webhooks part, I will get back to you on how you can do it easily with using Codemagic.
So,
Awesome.
Damien,
Thank you.
is this actually for like a release app, or is this just that you know personally when the build's finished, so you get a push notification?
Yes. Yes.
The last one. Okay. Well, I was going to say, because you could just like there's like Slack plugins and other things that kind of can hook up to Codemagic, so that you can just get like a notification that way, and then you'll get a push notification from Slack saying that it's finished or it had a problem. There's also, I don't know if it's still there, maybe our speaker can say, but there was an app from Codemagic like that you can monitor your builds on.
That's why what I was about to ask, if there is an app actually.
As of now, I'm not aware of any app, but I would surely love to see an app from you that helps you monitor the status of your app on Codemagic. I think that will be a really cool project to work on. I don't know. So there's this person called Taha in our team, and he recently worked on creating an app that uses the iPhone, the Pro Max live widgets that you have, that shows the status of your build on the lock screen itself, which was really cool.
Great.
So apart from this, do you have any questions, any ideas, suggestions, anything?
Anyone have any questions? And I think this is like a great assignment given by Rudrank. But Simon, are we considering this assignment to participants should finish that?
No, this was just
no, I don't think it's like that. But I do think the thing is, there's no question at the moment. I think once everyone tries the CI/CDs, with Codemagic, then they'll have some questions at the end of that to say, how do I do this, or it wasn't easy to do that, So for the moment, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it is so easy that nobody have a question actually.
And another thing that if I talk about Codemagic is that we have a really good documentation. So if you have any thing that you have struggling with or have any queries, then you can just search for anything. Let's say I have problem with code signing, and I will see that there are many documents related to code signing, like code signing in iOS app. And we have documentation as well as YouTube videos that guide you with code signing on Codemagic. So as Edward asked a good question, that actually what if something is missing, like test, for example, does Codemagic like just go over it or does it stop? So if I go back to the screen of my build, you can see that you have the option of going to test and disabling the test. Like I can disable test. But if you enable the test and the project does not contains any test, the build will fail. And then you can see why the build failed, because it does not have any tests. And then for now, you can disable the test if you do not have any tests in your app. Also, what other interesting commands you have added to your pipeline in your experience so far? So there are some, when it comes to your app, that you may want to get some dependencies beforehand, or you may have some pre commands that you want to enable in your app. So there's this plus button where you can just write any script, a manual script here that just runs after the clone phase has finished, or you can try to run some script before the test phase has started. It has and if I go and create, there's another option to create the post test after the test have finished, or any post that you want to create before the build has finished. And even after some post build scripts that you want to do, here you can do anything you want on some cleanup that you want to do, or dependency caching, or anything you want to do here.
Yeah, so I just want to mention that a good example, someone's just mentioned Melos here, because a good example is things like running your code generation as a pre-built script, right? So you can ensure that all your code is up to date. It's, you know, it's built with the latest packages and so on and so forth. There's other things, obviously, there's PostScript that, you know, you can record the build and various information to your, you know, send a Slack message. There's you because it's a script, you can do whatever you want. It's a bash script. So, you know, you can call other APIs and so on and link that up to whatever your system is, which is very handy, very helpful.
Like, let's say you are using Microsoft Teams and not Slack messages, you can write a custom script here that sends a message to your Microsoft Teams channel. Or call a Firebase function and the function sends a push notification. I think, yes, that's a very good and classic example of writing a post published script after a build to make sure that if the build has successfully passed or not, then you can send a function and send a push notification, and then you can, that push notification, you can get it in your app that you are creating, Damien. Like, even if you see under the distribution section, we also have Firebase app distribution. It opened a documentation. I did not want it to do that. So we have the Firebase app distribution where you can publish Firebase app where you don't want to go to the test flight or app store. You can use Firebase app distribution and to send it to your external testers or users. Would Melos need to be installed on the build machine? So yes, you can add it in the script. You should run it after the clone has finished. So after, you can add a script here for installing Melos. So anything that is not on the build machine, you can check by just writing on Google M1 machine specifications, and then you can see the hardware system and the pre-installed tools that Codemagic build machines already have. So if I search for Melos, it is not there. So you can add a script to run it before any test or anything happens, build happens. You can see that Fastlane, Firebase, Flutter, these are already pre-installed on the machine. Node, NPM, So I hope you all start building using Codemagic, and as you have seen how easy it is, it will take you maximum a few minutes to set it up. And if there's any problem, then you can wait, I was supposed to go to my last slide, right? I forgot to open my last slide. So if I go back to my slideshow, you can contact me on Twitter at Rudrank Riyam, on LinkedIn at Rudrank, and my GitHub at Rudrank Riyam if you have any problems. And Codemagic also has a very vibrant and diverse community on Slack that you can subscribe to. I will just post a link to it here as well. If you have any problems, then the whole customer success engineering team is present there. And with that, I'm very thankful to Renuka, Simon, and Sumit to having me around here and talking about Codemagic and just blabbering around CI/CD. And I hope you all understood the introduction, having a good introduction to CI/CD and the need for it.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. So I think if that's the end of the questions, we can call it here then. And
yeah,
do you want to bring up your contact information again? Yeah, so people need to see everything. Yeah, if there's anything you need, I'm sure you'll know where to find him. Also,
yes, I'm very active on Twitter. It's my the first place that I go to after waking up. So you can just contact me on Rudrank Riyam at Twitter.
All right, then. Thank you very much. And yeah, give him a hand. Yeah, thank you very much. It's really nice to see CI/CD in one place. So yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, amazing work. Cheers.
Yeah. So Simon, this is our last session. Today's the session was the last session.
Oh, God,
yeah, it's finished now. This is the last session for our dev camp.
So yeah, we'll be sending out notifications around the announcement of dates and everything else. So we will be doing, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, Renuka, the plan is to also have an online. So part of our graduation bit will be also online as well. So those that can't make it in person can always make it online. And if you, for those that have, obviously please submit all your stuff you've got. If you feel you're running late, that's fine. Just try and get submitted as soon as possible. Please ask if you need an extension. We are sort of going to have to call it on at the end of the month because we do need some time to go through everyone's submissions before graduation. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you all at DevFest London as well, or some of you at least.
Yeah,
in
definitely.
person, that'd be fun.
We want to be this. If anybody wants to come, then let us know. We were very happy to be part of the DevFest and Dev Camp together, like a graduation party. We have a special track for the Flutter. You will see the amazing speakers there. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for everyone for joining us, and we'll speak again soon. And we'll communicate on the Slack. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.